College Newsroom. Today on this podcast I will be investigating the New Zealand tar cull and what people's opinion are on it. The tar culls are something DOC put in place in 2019 to lower the tar numbers in Central Otago region. A tar is a form of a goat originally introduced in 1904 as a gift to New Zealand. They are from the Himalayan ranges of India and Nepal. Their habitat is very high, steep country, and they eat scrub. DOC's thinking of getting rid of the tar was to stop them eating all the native scrub and give a chance for other native animals to feed, because tar are not actually a native animal and they are stopping other native animals being able to eat. I chose this topic because I think it's a big part of New Zealand environment and the future of national parks and farms in the Otago region. First, I will be speaking to Arthur Mears, who is a tar hunter enthusiast and is very knowledgeable on the situation of the tar culls.
My opinion on the tar culls is that they're a helpful thing for the environment and the vegetation in the national parks, and I think it was the right thing to do because they are a pest and they do ruin some of the national parks and the farmers' land around New Zealand. The population of the tar has definitely decreased from the 2020 tar cull shoot. The only negatives would be for people who don't like killing animals, but I think it's probably a good thing to do because it's the circle of life. So
Arthur clearly knows what he's talking about. He raises some interesting points about that it is a good thing that they are getting rid of them for the scrub, and it is also the circle of life getting rid of numbers. Next, we have Max Dormer, who is a young hunter who lives in the region of the culls and has strong opinions on both sides of it. He has killed a lot of tar in his time and goes tar hunting most of the time when he's not in the boarding house. What is your opinion on the tar culls?
I think tar culls are a good thing for national parks, and I should keep doing it because it's keeping the numbers down for the native animals, to keep them around. But yeah, no, people are against it, some people, but it's overall a good thing as long as they don't get rid of all of them. So they should keep doing it while they can.
Was it the right thing to do?
It was a good, it was good.
Do you think it's helped the tar population?
I think it's made a small impact. Well, not small, half decent impact. And they should keep doing it.
Do you think there's any negative sides of this?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I think it's overall pretty good.
Thank you, Max, for your very knowledgeable opinion and your great points you raised. Today we'll be talking to someone who has to remain anonymous due to privacy agreements with his company. He has done a lot with the tar culls and is very knowledgeable on them and is still heavily involved with the topic of the tar culls.
From my point of view, the tar culling is a good option. There are an extortionate amount of animals out there that will never be controlled. A small number of better, well-controlled tar is a good option as long as we still leave enough for commercial and recreational hunting. As a helicopter company, we see it as the work that we have to take part in, as if we don't do it, someone else will. It may as well be us doing some of it rather than our competitors. It is not a massive part of our business, but it is still necessary in our view.
After conducting these interviews and investigating the topic, everyone had some great points and arguments with both sides of the argument. It is very clear that everyone has their own strong opinions on the tar culls. There is no right or wrong solution to it because everybody thinks differently. I think from talking to these people, I got out of it is that all of them wished DOC went a different way about putting them in place then there would have been no disruption about it. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Sam Cochran, The Newsroom, Christ College.
Hello and welcome as we investigate why a growing number of secondary schools are electing to drop NCEA Level 1. A survey conducted by the Ministry of Education in 2023 found that only 73% of schools continue to offer the standard. So what's the cause behind this? And is the NCEA Level 1 what schools really want? To find out, we contacted the Ministry of Education, Nicole Belante, Director of Christ College's Diploma Program, and Assistant Principal for interviews. While we were not able to secure an interview with the ministry, they did respond in writing.
College dropped the standard, which is optional in New Zealand, back in 2022. Nicole Belante, who oversaw this change, cited burnout and anxiety as the main reason.
And the reason for that is that there was a big step up between Level 1 and Level 2. And we felt that sometimes boys got lulled into a bit of a false sense of security about how well they had done. And also, it was a lot of assessment. So by year 13, a lot of boys got fatigued. They just didn't care that much about their learning and assessment anymore. There was just 3 years of non-stop assessment. We are the only country in the OECD that assesses that much. So we actually stepped back and we went, how can we help our boys' well-being and their learning? And so we decided that actually no longer pursuing Level 1 and doing our own program of learning that we think could enable us to better prepare students for Level 2 was the way to go.
The Ministry of Education says they understand the concerns raised by schools and have introduced a number of measures to address them, such as reducing the number of standards per subject and providing a more comprehensive guideline to help teachers create their own version of NCEA Level 1. They also pointed to the benefits of introducing an assessment-focused curriculum early, saying, quote, "For many students, NCEA Level 1 introduces them to the format of NCEA assessments and prepares them for their next steps in their learning journey." When we asked Nicole Belante about her opinion on the matter, she said that students are better prepared in an environment that's not so much focused around test-taking techniques, but rather, quote, higher-level thinking, which will assist them in not only passing, but achieving excellence.
The difference, I believe, in what we're doing in our prep courses is that our prep courses are able to teach you higher-level thinking and content. And that enables you to have the thinking and the content skills necessary for Level 2 more than Level 1. When under the old Level 1 system, yes, you were learning some of assessment techniques, but you weren't actually learning the thinking required for Level 2. And so as a result, boys would know how to do the assessment, but they wouldn't necessarily know how to achieve the excellences because their thinking just wasn't there. So we wanted to change the priority to around the thinking and the learning first, because assessment technique is the easier of the two to teach you.
The ministry says they are not troubled by schools developing their own curriculum. On the contrary, they instead encourage these developments. Quote, "By thoughtfully integrating NCEA standards, schools ensure alignment with national benchmarks while maintaining flexibility. Balancing academic rigor with holistic development, schools can foster well-rounded growth and prepare students for success." It's important to acknowledge the privileged position many schools are in that allow them to make the switch. Most of the schools who've chosen to drop the standards are private, and this is something the Ministry of Education points out. Quote, "While some schools did not see NCEA Level 1 as necessary for their learners, other high-quality EQI schools argue strongly that NCEA Level 1 be retained to support some of their vulnerable learners to leave school with a qualification." Nicole Belante also shares this sentiment.
And for schools like ours, we are in a privileged position, and I recognize our privilege, that we have students who will go on and get at least their Level 2. And Level 2 is actually the qualification that's required to go out into the world. Level 3 plus university entrance, obviously, if you want to go and do that level of study. But even if you're just doing an apprenticeship, etc., you need level 2. So that's why there's a whole bunch of schools now, because of that conversation back in 2019 or so, that have recognized, actually, do our particular students in our school need it? And that's why I think you're seeing some schools continue it and some schools discontinue.
Christ College was advised to revisit its position on NCA in response to a curriculum review conducted by the then Deputy Headmaster, Joe Collecton, who suggested dropping the standard as one of the options the school could take. Ultimately, the Ministry of Education wishes to let schools decide for themselves whether or not to offer NCA Level 1. Year 11 is often the last year students are required to take, and thus NCA Level 1 is the only chance they have to receive a formal qualification. On the other hand, the assessment-focused nature of the curriculum disadvantages many students and adds unwarranted stress and anxiety, while resource-rich schools are able to do better by customizing their own standards to fit their students' needs. Comparatively poorer institutions do not have such a privilege and have to make do with what they're given.
Good morning, I'm Wilfie Wells, and today I'm talking about fishing, one of my greatest passions. I'll be talking to Darren Simpson about game fishing and his knowledge of the sport. Hi, I'm Wilfie Wells from the Newsroom, and today I'm asking Darren Simpson a few questions on his thoughts about game fishing. Game fishing to me is a time-consuming way of fishing, but like all fishing, you'll get the reward of catching fish if you know what you're doing. Here's Darren with his knowledge about fishing.
I started fishing probably when I was about 11 or 12 in a reasonably committed way. It was mainly because I used to go with my dad a lot fishing, and then from there, once I sort of reached an age, I really sort of decided it was something I wanted to do, and started doing quite a bit of fishing from there. So it would have been about 11 or 12 years old, but I did do a bit before that, but it was mainly with my dad. So.
Where did you get most of your knowledge from? Was that from your dad too?
Yeah, a lot of my knowledge was from my dad. He used to love it. He would do anything to go fishing. He would walk places, hitchhike. He just really wanted to go fishing. And he also, when you do that, there's a lot of like-minded people that you meet. And he had a lot of friends, very similar. I just loved their fishing. So, yeah, just being with them, you just naturally pick up a lot of knowledge as you go along with them over the years. Yeah, they're happy to teach you when you're younger, so it was good.
Yeah, it's cool. What is game fishing to you, and why do people continue it?
I think game fishing, like any fishing, is it's a challenge. It's the excitement. It's with game fishing, they say it's 90% boredom and 10% action, and it can definitely be like that, but nothing like a big marlin or the strike, hearing that reel go, that impatience, and the challenge of, in some cases, a very large fish, and you pit yourself against that fish. But I think the excitement of the first initial strike and the sound of that reel going is pretty cool.
What was the longest fight you've had with a fish?
I had a couple of fights. They weren't super long. It would have been around the 3 hours on marlin, and I did fight a thrasher shark on Rick Pollock's boat for some time in quite horrible seas. It was pretty ugly, pretty heinous, but I'd hooked it in the tail, so trying to drag a large shark backwards doesn't go well. So, quite a long fight, Wolfie. Yeah.
I can remember you told me one time your dad had quite a big fight with a marlin. Can you tell me a bit about that?
So it was back in 1990 on Rick Pollock's boat. We did quite a lot of fishing with Rick. He would be probably one of the, if not the most known and incredible sort of charter fisherman of the time. But anyway, they hooked up they threw out a lure on the way back home, and they hooked a black marlin, and Dad fought it for 7.5 hours. Stand up. They didn't have a chair on the boat, so he broke a couple of gimbal belts. And he also found that because of the energy expend and the long time fighting the fish, he started to, your mind plays tricks with you. And he said he was sort of hallucinating a little bit and having weird thoughts. But it was 7.5 hours. They finally got the fish, and it was 374 kilo black marlin. So, yeah, it was a record at the time on 80-pound gear, Wolfie. So, yeah, they landed early hours of the morning. And they actually landed on April Fool's. So when Dad told me about it, I said, yeah, right, because it's April Fool's. Yeah, but no, quite an achievement to fight a fish standing up for 7.5 hours, yeah. Crazy, yeah. Imagine a whole day doing that, basically.
That's mad. Yeah. And to all the beginner game fishermen out there, if there was one thing you would have wanted to know when you first started out, what would that be?
I think it's quite exciting, just finding your own way. I think the basics of fishing are there, whether you trout fish, Wolfie, or your kingfish or your marlin fish. What would I want to know? I don't think particular. I don't know. Obviously, maybe an area, or just the basics of what you might do. But I think it's just a learning thing when you do it, and you just find your own way. I don't think there's particularly anything. You just, where do I start and where do I go? It's a big ocean, but just look for the bait, look for the birds, and I think most guys will tell you that when you start out fishing, look for birds and bait, and that's probably the first thing you'll probably want to know when you go out game fishing. Just the basics of it. So, yeah. And I think you know that yourself. You've been out yourself, Wolfie. So
yeah, I do.
Yeah. So no, probably that. Just a couple of basic instructions to what to look for when you go out.
I'm Wolfie Wells, and thank you for listening to my podcast.